Happy Wisdom Wednesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Maria Milagros, and I usually do one video and I call them one and done, and I get in front of the video and I just talk, and then I, pick a subject and I talk about it and wrap it up. Done. I've already made this video like 4 times because each time it's about 20 minutes long. I find that there's no short way to talk about breaking the internal cycle of abuse. And there's no short way. There's no way around it. So this is my last attempt, and whatever happens with this is what I'm going to go for it, and I'm going to post it and believe that this is what people need to hear. I want to have a conversation about abuse, either past physical, sexual abuse, because I'm finding that there are many women who have experienced it and have never shared that they did. And these women are 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, and they've never said to another person until recently, that happened to me. I went through that. And I've been making all my life decisions because of that. Of course you have, because there wasn't a safe place for you to have a conversation, or at least you didn't feel like there was. There's shame and guilt that comes with being sexually abused, even sometimes physical abuse. Like, you feel like, or sometimes the abusers say, you did this, you deserve this, you called this on yourself. And we start to believe that we are not deserving of good things, that we're only deserving of pain and suffering. We start to identify with that, and we start to believe that that's going to be our entire lives, right? There was one woman in particular that I spoke to, and she was sexually abused when she was younger, and then she said every boy that she would come in contact with, she would just give it to him, because she, in her mind, convinced herself that he's going to take it anyways. So this is just at least I feel like I have some control in this. And that just broke my heart. It just broke my heart. And then personally, from the sexual abuse that I experienced as a child, I went to the other end of the spectrum where I avoided human contact. Don't hug me, don't touch me, don't come near me, don't tap me on my shoulder. Please don't stand behind me and tap me on my shoulder, because we might get into a fight. Just stay away from me. And I went to that other extreme, and I convinced myself I'm not a victim, I'm in control. And then I avoided human contact, altogether. And that's not how we're designed to be. And I remember, for me, the pivotal moment was I was in college, and I was at the library, and I was standing in line. I got in line to check out some books, and this guy put his hand on my shoulder behind me, and I turned around and I lost it. I mean, I was like a trucker sailor. So many F-bombs. I was so loud. I was yelling and just really out of control. Don't touch me. Who do you think you are? You don't get to put your hand. I lost it. And he was shaking a little bit, and then he handed me these papers and said, I'm sorry, you dropped these papers, and I just wanted to return them to you. And I looked around the library and realized that everybody was staring at me. And I thought, oh my God, I need help. I need help. Because this man was just putting his hand on my shoulder to return some of my own papers to me, and I went off as if he was the abuser. I was treating everyone like that. I trusted no one. I lived in fear. There was this heaviness that weighed on me. I started to imagine my abusers as these huge cinder blocks with chains on them, and I was dragging these things everywhere I went, just constantly moving them into my future, into my next day, and not dealing with my stuff, right? So I finally went and started seeking therapy, and I got some help. And you fill out this form when you first go in. And I remember when I went in, the therapist's first thing out of the therapist's mouth was pointing to the sheet where I checked off all these little boxes and said, this was not your fault. And I'm like, okay, I know. No, this was not your fault. These were some effed up people with their effed up issues, and people who abuse are usually looking to get power, to like maintain control, or they're repeating patterns because that happened to them and that's all they know to be real. But this was not your fault. And I remember that moment feeling like for the first time, it was a glimpse of freedom. No, you're right. This wasn't my fault. And like logically, as an adult now, I knew there was nothing that I did, but still I was broken because I really believed that there was something that I did. I was carrying around all this shame and all this guilt, and there was nothing that I did. Like, it wasn't my fault. So I want to start just by saying to you, and I know I say start and we're like 10 minutes in or whatever, but I just, it's not your fault. Whatever it was, no one deserves abuse. Physical, mental, emotional, sexual. No one deserves abuse. Not ever. No one ever. You cannot justify abusing another person. You can't. That being said, I had to recognize that my abusers were also broken people. They were hurt and they were broken, and hurt people will hurt people, and broken people will try to break people. If not, they do break people because they're lacking. And so they think that if they try to put you in the same place because misery loves company, it's going to make them feel better. And it's temporary. And I know that because I've spoken to many abusers. And I had to really start doing the work to not just identify and acknowledge what happened so that I could rectify it, but also to acknowledge all of the lies that were generated based on the events that occurred in my past. I had to really start to deal with all of the extra stuff that came up from the abuse that they never had to say out loud. It was just the stuff that was associated with it. And I had to start really doing that work and acknowledge that those were all lies. Everything that I was believing about myself to be real based on the abuse was a lie. It was all lies. The truth, the other part of the work, was figuring out who I am, who God is, how we're connected, and what is real about me. What is real? And so what eventually happened, and this is years of work, is that the facts of my past no longer became the precursors of my future. I was a victim, but I was no longer going to live a victimized life because I decided to forgive and release them. And in doing that, initially when I did that, it was like I was lying to myself. And then eventually the more that I said it and the more that I repeated it, the more that I believed it. And then I actually became it. And then I remember when it was actual freedom. When I would say I forgive my abusers and I didn't break down and lose myself. And I say I forgive my abusers and I could feel the chains being cut. And I could feel the lightness of my life take hold, and I could feel hope and love and peace and joy fill me because I was no longer being crushed and compacted and weighed down by this weight. And then I was able to recognize that a lot of the decisions that I was making up until that point, because they were based on fear, they were not healthy decisions. And again, it wasn't until I was willing to go through the pain, because the only way to get through pain is to go through it and to really acknowledge the process and to just step into the journey and to do the work and to love myself and to connect to God and to forgive and to release. And these things are like words that people throw around, but I want to be clear that I recognize how hard this work is. But just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not possible, right? Hard and impossible are very different words. And so you get through the work and you realize that on the other side, the grass is in fact greener. It's true. that life can be super sparkly everything. It can. It is. I live it. I experience it right now. I live a life of peace and joy and freedom. And I don't have to make decisions out of fear anymore. I don't make decisions from that place anymore. I make decisions that work for me and for my life because I know who I am and I know whose I am. And I trust the process, and I trust the spirit, and I trust love. I trust love. And so initially I thought, I'm not going to give you any pointers, but I guess there are a few here. If you have suffered abuse, please know that it is not your fault. It was not your fault. I want you to find a mirror, and I want you to say to yourself, look yourself in the eye and say, that was not my fault. That was not my fault. And you're going to keep doing it, and you're going to keep saying it until you feel that shift take place. And then you're going to get back in that mirror, and you're going to affirm yourself, and you're going to keep affirming yourself, and you're going to tell yourself how amazing and capable and resilient and intelligent and beautiful and extraordinary you are, because you were made in the image of God. Like he said, let's make them in our likeness. That's extraordinary. And then you're going to take that and you're going to say, I have a purpose and I'm here for a reason. And those stories are not going to break me. As a matter of fact, those stories are going to help someone else find their salvation. And you're going to be able to use your stories and your past to be able to help other people cut the chains, to forgive, to release, to find freedom, to live in the fullness that God has promised us. Because again, he did not say, I've given you life to live it to the fear. He said, I've given you life to live it to the full. And the full is freedom, and the full is love, and the full is laughter, and the full is joy, and the full is happiness. All the time. All the time. Well, 98% of the time, but that's the life that we deserve to live. And so many of us are hindered by the things that have happened to us in the past because of the weight of it, and we identify with it. And it's scary to think of the amount of work that has to happen, but I promise you, once you start taking those steps, it's not always going to be easy, but it is always possible, and you deserve it, and you deserve it. So that's where I'm going to leave you. If you want to share your story, you can either email me or you can write it in the comments, but just please know that you're not alone. You are not alone. It was not your fault. You are amazing and beautiful, and there's nothing that you can do to separate yourself from God. There's nothing that can ever happen that will separate you from the love of God, because he is pure, unconditional, unadulterated love. And that's where we all need to be living. But we don't even allow ourselves to go there because we're carrying all this extra weight, and we can't get there because we're dragging this stuff with us. Forgive, release, affirm. Yeah. So, if you know someone who could benefit from this, or who could benefit from being a part of the conversation or the dialogue, please share this. If you need help, counseling, or therapy, please do yourself the favor and go seek it out. Please, because we deserve to live in the fullness of our lives. And when we fully love ourselves, we know who we are and whose we are. We're not just better for ourselves. We're better for every other human that we come in contact with. We're better for our children and our spouses and our significant others. And we're just better. And then we create better, longer lasting ripple effects throughout our lives. And that's everything. Hashtag that's everything. So yeah, okay. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And I love you. And you're not alone, and God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And hit me up if you want to talk about it.